Hello and welcome back to the Opposites Abroad podcast, the podcast about all things travel. Charlie Bosco and TT here as ever, joined by a very special guest this week. A bit like TT, known primarily by his Instagram handle. I mean, I guess not by everyone. I mean, I guess your mum doesn't call you Obscurist Tourist, but it's at Obscurist Tourist, better known as Christian Patrick. Although just before we came on air, you said that Patrick's not your real surname, and now I feel bad that I didn't attempt the Polish pronunciation.
It's fine. It's fine. Honestly, I use Patrick for pretty much everything because no one can spell my 14-letter back to back consonant Polish last name. So yeah, Patrick will do.
Can you give us a quick whirl so we can at least try?
Kluczynski. So there's a lot of C's and Z's in there.
It's not too hard to say. I guess it's pretty hard to spell.
It looks a lot. It sounds a lot easier than it is. Yeah, believe me. Every time I check into a hotel, they're like, "Can I attempt it?" And I'm like, "Do it." Yeah. So.
Well, thanks so much for coming on. This is great to have you.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, Charlie and I were talking about, having different guests on, and I just love your Instagram. I think it's so clever, the way you do things and the things you show that fit in with your name of Obscurist Tourist that two people normally wouldn't see. I think it's always good to get people to go see things they wouldn't normally go to and not just the big sites. And some of the stuff that you go to are some things I've seen or things I've been interested in, and then sometimes things that I've never even heard of. I just think it's awesome. How do you find this stuff, or how do you pick your trips?
Well, first of all, thank you so much. So to give you background about how it started, I mentioned earlier that I just drove back from Vancouver Island after being stranded there. But for the past 25, 26 years, there's a service here in Toronto, and I'm sure it exists in various cities all over and in Europe, but it's a drive-away. So basically you're relocating cars for people who have other residences in other cities. So there's a lot of snowbirds here in Toronto, and they have properties in Palm Springs, California, a lot in Florida, a lot in Arizona. And so basically way back in the late 90s, I started driving cars down to Florida, relocating. So in the fall, winter period, it's people going south to the sun, and then in the spring they come back. And that's how I got started, and I was doing them so often, maybe 2, sometimes 3 times a year, that a lot of the routes just started to become really too familiar and boring when you stick to the interstates and the main highways. And so I just started planning out these routes, not even thinking about where I was going. It was basically, how can I get from, say, Palm Springs, California to Toronto without using the highway in a certain amount of time? And I didn't know where I was ending up a lot of times or what I would see. And just taking a lot of pictures along the way. And I'm like, this is crazy. Like places I remember I went to, I can't remember where it was in New Mexico, but it was like the birthplace of the story of Yogi the Bear, and or Smokey the Bear. And it is like, I had no idea that was even a real bear that it was based upon. And then the more I traveled on these back roads, I would come across these like sort of mainstream pop culture things that I had no idea where the lineage of them was. And so it just became this like huge library of like weird things, right? And I had a friend who's just like, you should just post about this. And I'm like, I have no idea what I would even do with it. And that's basically where it was born from. Just started back in just before the pandemic, 2019. So
that wasn't the best timing to be a travel Instagrammer just before the lockdowns. That was pretty unfortunate timing.
Yeah, it was. but I had years of backlog of stuff, so that was. I remember thinking, I'm like, man, what a lucky time to have kept all this stuff and started up like just before, right? Because I didn't actually have to go anywhere. So there's like about an 18-month period where I didn't leave my neighborhood, but it looked like I was everywhere, right? So it helped me to hone what it's become today. So.
And for people that haven't seen your Instagram, and TT put me onto it at Obscurist Tourist, I feel like you're the anti-influencer. You don't go and have your picture taken at Lake Louise and the Eiffel Tower and all these classic places.
That's sort of the interesting part is I remember someone called me an influencer a couple of years ago. It was I don't know, some company, and it really kind of offended me in a weird way. Because I was like, nah, that's not what I am. I'm more about serving inspiration through like actual things rather than myself. It's like, if you go through my page, there's not a lot of photos of me on it, and I think that kind of makes it serves the purpose better. I think that people don't, at the end of the day, I don't think people care about influencers. They care about the content. And so to me, it seemed self-serving to post photos of myself. And every time I did, I would see like, it didn't feel good to me. So that's for my private channels, my private Instagram or whatever. But so
like your OnlyFans?
yeah. OnlyFans for travel, imagine. me with a cactus.
So yeah, because I mean, it seems that you really take an interest in the smaller things in life, hence the name. Where did that come from? Is that just because you suddenly got off the highway and realized there was so much interest?
I think I remember driving through Arizona one time, this really small town called Apache, Arizona, and I remember being stopped at a stop sign, and I looked to the left, and there was like a plaque about some Native Americans who had a famous battle there. And I remember thinking, I bet you no one in this town even pays attention to this plaque. And then when the pandemic hit, it started driving it home for me locally, where I would look around. I don't do a lot of Toronto stuff because it doesn't interest me. I grew up here, right? So, but it made me appreciate more things like plaques and like just historical markers. And that became sort of like, I wanted to bring to the forefront the stuff that we see every day in our own backyards that we don't pay attention to, but they're like super interesting to like people like me, everyone else, like if as a visitor. So, and I felt they're very underserved by travelers. People just want to go to like, they want to go to the museum or whatever, which is fine. But for me, it's like the smaller idiosyncratic things in like places that I don't live that I find super interesting because it speaks it's a big story as to why that place even exists or like what came from it, right? So
do you like graveyards?
I do love graveyards. One of my favorite things. I don't post a lot about it, but I do. Yeah.
Looking for like one of the weirdest things I ever did traveling, or things that people would think was weird but not you, was I spent forever looking for Colonel Sanders' grave in Kentucky, and I finally found it. And it was one of those things that when I told about it, looked at me like I was just an idiot, and I was like, yeah, I spent like forever looking for his grave. And it was really cool because there's like a statue of him next to his grave, and he was a real person. He wasn't really a colonel, but yeah, I think that stuff's so cool.
That's like, if I'm not like documenting things in a town, I'm in the local cemetery. Honestly, I think I love the weird names on like tombstones. And
yeah, it's amazing speculating as well. When someone died really old, hundreds of years ago, you think, God, they must have been the oldest person in the town.
They're 35.
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, people that lived to 90 in the 1800s, and you think they must have been like a freak show.
That's why I love desert towns in Arizona, because you have a lot of those old cemeteries are like early settler cemeteries, and they have how they died on it. And
they actually have the method of death.
Yeah. So it's like really interesting and kind of hilarious to see like the method of death. It was just like they just have weird euphemisms for how they died. Like for suicide, there's just like so many different euphemisms. They never actually want to say it's like death at one's own hand. So it's and I don't know if you've ever read Bill Bryson's book, Notes from a Big Country. And he talks about his driving through America, and I'd never been to America when I read it, and he was saying, when you're driving through America, most towns have a sign for an attraction, and it'll just be the weirdest thing. World's largest park bench, you know, or it's like, world's smallest car is here, functioning car is here, world's biggest, smallest, longest, highest. It's almost as if every town in America has its own bit of weirdness. It's pretty amazing. I think I can't remember. It was somewhere in the Midwest, and I went through there like not that long ago, and they had the world's largest ball of twine. And I was like, "What a who's stopping for this?" Except for me, I stopped. But like, so bizarre, right?
Were you their first visitor ever?
I don't think so.
I feel like we could the next town in Kansas could just make a bigger one. And then just really,
100%.
really shit on their neighbors.
That's pretty. I feel like they were doing that all through the 70s and 80s. Was just outdoing each other with weirdness, town to town. So
now,
there's I was gonna say there's another thing I really want to see that maybe you've seen, and I keep wanting to do a road trip to it, but it's like 15 hours away from Denver, and that is Captain Janeway Memorial in Indiana for her hometown. But of course, she never really existed. She's just the captain in Star Trek. But they actually built a monument with a statue of her as her hometown, and it's like the least popular Star Trek show they ever made. And I just think it's the most awesome, ridiculous thing ever. And I really, really, really want to go to it.
I definitely have heard of it, and I've never been. But that's the beauty of like that stuff is just trying to put your like, for the lack of a better town, the word is like small shitty town on the map, right? Is like you'll do anything to like drum up tourism, and it's kind of brilliant in a way because a lot of the early mayors or like political leaders of these towns just tried to figure out a way to get people into their town if they weren't on a major interstate, right? So, or like Route 66.
Yeah.
Yeah, what is the origins, or what are the origins of all this, I guess we could call it Americana, weird stuff?
It's tourism. It was like, it was just basically getting people to stop because there would be no other reason to stop, right? You know, when Route 66 existed, people had reason to stop in a lot of these towns. And then when they built the I-40, it took away a lot of the off ramps, and a lot of these cities and towns died, and so they began. Not that it started there, but it definitely like ramped up, where they were figuring out ways to get people in there. You know, like I don't know, world's largest paint bucket. It's like just the most random stuff because they didn't have anything else. You know. So,
what is your impression of this industry? Is it still there, or is it now become kind of kitsch about something that was kitsch? Is it kind of double kitsch, or is it still something that people in the towns are proud of and that they're trying to push?
I think my understanding, a lot of the people that I meet in these towns that have things like that, they think it's cheesy.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to imagine being really proud of your ball of twine. I mean, there's nothing against the good folk of Kansas.
But they also, like, there's a sense of humor about it, right? If you can't make fun of yourself. Like, a lot of these roadside attractions, per se, were created way before anyone, way before a lot of people were even born, right? So a lot of people that I talk to are like, oh, you're here to see this or this, and I'm like, yeah, where is it? And they'll laugh and they'll be like, oh, it's over there. It's like, I think it's everything's tongue in cheek, right? It's like, I think it was taken a lot more seriously back when they were created as viable reasons for tourism, and now they're just like pastiche in a lot of ways, but I appreciate it just because there is a sense of humor attached to it now. So,
And what are your top three things, the weirdest things you've ever seen that you'd recommend that are worth the drive for somebody?
I can't think of any roadside attractions per se.
Just obscurist tourist stuff.
That's actually a tough question.
It is a very tough
I'm racking
question.
my brains for mine now.
It's interesting because before we did that, I was like, I made a list of just weird stuff, and that was like not one of the things that I would even consider, because there's just so much. Like, I think, not to go off topic, but to keep on topic, is like, in Canada here, there's such a negative connotation for the U.S., and I think that's not even political. That's just, especially here in Toronto, people's exposure to the U.S. is New York City or Los Angeles, and they don't think of everything in between. And it's interesting because I don't like New York or Los Angeles, and I love everything in between. I think there's so many amazing things that you could drive 2 hours between small towns and find something absolutely amazing. And it's like I said, I've been driving across the U.S. for 26, 27 years, and it never fails to amaze me to see some of the stuff that I find. I'm like, I thought I saw everything. And then I'll go down a rural road, and I'm like, what the hell is this? And it's just, I can't. It's impossible to pin down. I mean, there is, if we want to get into roadside attractions, there's a place in Sparta, Wisconsin, and it's actually where they create the roadside attraction statues. The big fiberglass statues. It's called the Sparta Fiberglass Mold Museum and Graveyard, and it's all the molds from the 1950s, 60s, down to the 70s, and they're all there. They're just sitting in a giant field waiting to be used again.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
It's amazing, yeah.
In a way, it kind of defies the point to name the famous ones, I guess, because I don't know about you, I can't remember the minutiae.
I can't.
Yeah,
I can't. There's too much stuff in my head.
But it's almost
in all of our heads, right?
The point of it, in a way, is that you just go, what do you know?
Yeah.
Biggest ball of twine.
So do you always drive somewhere and then you just see kind of what's on the way and find stuff? Or do you ever do, like I mentioned, the Janeway thing where you're like, I'm going to drive this amount of hours because I specifically want to see this weird thing I heard about?
I used to do that. I used to kind of hear about something on my trip, or a local would tell me, they're like, oh, you should see this, and I'd be like, all right, I'll drive 7 hours out of my way to see that. But I got, in all honesty, 9 times out of 10 it wasn't worth it. So the longer I've been doing this, I've been doing a little bit more research on a bigger goal, and whatever I find in between might be better than that bigger goal, but at least it's got to be worth it for me. Otherwise, it's like, if you're driving for 60 hours trying to get point A to point B, like Toronto to Los Angeles or San Diego is it's probably about 55, 60 hours. It's like, you've got to be sure that you're not taking unnecessary time to drive, because by the time those 60 hours are up, you're like a zombie. So I really make sure that it's got to be worth it. The child curiosity within me will sometimes lead me down weird things, and I still get up to old habits, but for the most part, I try to do a little more research and then just see what happens in between.
I feel like every horror movie starts that way, or a lot of them, where it's like they stop at the gas station, and this gas attendant's like, "Oh, you're looking for blah 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 blah," and then they go off and something happens.
There's definitely been a lot of horror movie moments in these road trips, especially alone. Yeah, I agree.
Tell us one.
Probably one that happened a couple of years ago was I was on a work trip in Las Vegas, and they stuck me there for 2 weeks. I'll tell you, you don't want to be in Vegas for 2 weeks on the Strip. I was like in hell, and I was supposed to fly back, and I'm like, I can't go back to a big city right now, so I just rented a car, and I drove north into the Nevada desert for like 3 or 4 days. But on the way there, I was driving through, I hadn't really been in Death Valley in California. It's kind of like a little tiny sliver of California that runs adjacent to Nevada, like when you're going north in Nevada. And I'm like, I'll just go there. And there's a place called Death Valley Junction, and it's before the national park. And it has one motel there, and it's called the Amargosa Motel and Opera House. And I drove by it, and I'm like, it's weird because it was on Expedia and it was on Hotels.com, but it was totally abandoned. I was like, there's no way this is open. So I kept driving, and on the way back, I got caught in one of those dead zones where I was running out of gas, and when you're in the desert like that, you don't want to take too many unnecessary risks. And my Google Maps was conked out, and I'm like, I'm just gonna try to stay at this place. To me it's abandoned, but like it was on, these rental apps. So I went there. Lo and behold, it was open. It was a functioning hotel, and it was just that there were only about 10 rooms that were for rent. It was like a giant L shape, and 90% of it was abandoned, and just like this one part was for rent. And so I checked in, and you have to understand, this place is in the middle of nowhere. It's like probably 2 hours in every direction where there's nothing. There's no towns, nothing. And so I checked in around 6, 7, sun's going down, and I asked the woman if there was gas in town, and she's like, no, there's no gas. She's like, the town's abandoned. And I was like, okay. I'm like, why? And she's like, I don't think it's an appropriate time to say. And I'm like, I'm very curious. I'm alone.
Yeah,
right?
no way you're going to leave it there. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, all right, you're going to have to tell me. And she's like, well, it's cause the town's, it's haunted. And I'm like, oh, okay. And she's like, a lot of people left because it's haunted. I guess Ghost Adventures was through there. I mean, listen, I'm not a huge, I love haunted stories, but I'm not a huge buyer of these stories.
Yeah,
so,
same.
I mean,
same.
I'd be like, cool, all right, it's haunted. So I check into my room, probably the first hotel in years where there was no internet, there was no television. It was just, I'm just raw dogging it there alone in the middle of the desert. And I go back to the front desk, and she's like, so I will be back tomorrow at around 8 a.m. To serve you coffee, or if you require anything else. And I'm like, you'll be back? Where are you going? Which I would never ask a worker, like someone, but I'm like, we're in the middle of nowhere. She's like, oh, I live in a town about 100 miles away. And I'm like, by chance am I the only person staying in this hotel? And she's like, yeah. So that really...
How much was it a night? I want to know that.
It was probably...
$500.
No. It was probably around $80 US.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not even that cheap. Like, it's pretty cheap, but it's not even
free coffee though.
Yeah, true. I mean, what was it called again? I got to look up this place now.
It's called. I'll send you a link afterwards. It's called the Amargosa Hotel, but it was like, it had a really wonderful story of this woman named Marta Beckett. She started the opera house there, and she really rejuvenated this town and brought a lot of, like, she put on these one-woman performances, and it was very cool. It's just like there was nobody there, and it was.
So it's just you on your own in the hotel.
Yeah. It was one of those moments where I was like, it's interesting because I create a lot of, I record a lot of videos on my trips because my main thing, aside from the Instagram, is my YouTube channel. So I did one on this hotel and the story of this. And when I'm recording them, I'm not fearful. I'm like, it almost seems like it's the third person doing it because I'm seeing it through a lens. And it's not till I'm like editing these videos later on that I'm like, oh, that's pretty scary. That was one of those things where I was like, I can be a big chicken at times, but it was like there was no room to be scared because there was no way out of this situation.
Did you manage to sleep?
I did. I had an amazing sleep. Yeah. I was like,
so did you leave and go to like another town and you mention it and they're like, oh, that hotel burned down 100 years ago. Oh my God.
No, I didn't.
That would have been great though.
I went right to the airport, the Vegas airport after that. Found out later, it's like, do you know the movie The Hitcher with Rutger Hauer? It's like 1980s horror.
Yes.
That was the hotel that was featured in there.
Really?
And Lost Highway, David Lynch's, also had this hotel in it. So when it was more in its heyday. So it does have some Hollywood lineage to it.
That's now on TT's list as a place to visit.
Yeah, that sounds really cool.
Oh, it's amazing. It's one of the favorite places I've ever, like, just the story adds something to it, but I mean, this place was like, it was in movies, but it's out of a movie. Like, it's super cool.
I've stayed at haunted hotels before, and if there's something where it's like room 1408 is where this girl blah blah, and in the middle of the night, I'm always like, can I have that room? And I've never seen anything.
Me neither. Honestly, that's another common question. People are like, "Oh, have you ever had any haunted experiences?" I'm like, never in a place that was actually haunted. It was like a random Holiday Inn or something, like, like Crescent Hotel in Eureka Springs in Arkansas is like known as one of the most haunted hotels. I stay there all the time. I've never had a weird experience there. It's like,
well, yeah,
it's
that's like those ghost hunter shows. I feel like if they ever see something, I won't have to watch a show because it'll be all over the news. Because when you watch them, all it is, did you hear that? I'm like, no. Oh, it feels cold. Like
that's
like, oh, I just heard someone whisper in my ear. I'm like, I didn't hear anything.
That's the thing. The more I got into like video making and realizing how you can easily conjure up like a story, made me really like discount all of that stuff. Because it's not. I mean, look at Zach Baggins. He's made a career out of like the most ridiculous haunted television, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, not my thing.
No.
Why do you think America has this? Why is there Americana and there's no Canadiana? Canada doesn't seem like it has all this interesting stuff. And why is it developed south of the border more than it has here?
Well, here's the thing, and I would agree with you until a week ago when I drove through Canada, and I realized it does. It just doesn't exist in Ontario. It's all through Saskatchewan and Alberta.
Really? What are
Manitoba?
the big signs on the highway? And...
Yeah, they'll be like world's largest like goose, or that's Wawa. Actually, that's in Wawa, Ontario. So I'm wrong. Or it's like where the loonie was made, and they'll have the world's largest loonie, which is hilarious.
What's a loonie?
It's a Canadian $1 coin.
Yeah. Loonies and toonies.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not as prevalent. I think it's like very obvious in the U.S. because all of these towns are close together. In Canada, you have to go to the middle of nowhere to see it because they literally have to pull you in some way to this small middle of nowhere town, you know, like world's largest like wooden beaver, like yeah.
I mean, since Naked Gun, the word beaver is just irresistibly funny to me. I know. Nice beaver, thanks. I got it.
That might be something to drive for.
Yeah, exactly. I got it stuffed last week.
Yeah.
But I wonder if it's a historical thing. America's that little bit older than Canada, especially the west of Canada. So all the towns here developed for something, mining. Not many places were here for tourism.
Yeah.
No one's going to Quesnel, BC for tourism.
Well, it's a post World War II thing, right? For America, it's all when all the soldiers came back and the advent of like the car and like finally family road trips were like they're really pushing family road trips, and these roadside attractions were like the thing for a family to go away for a weekend or a couple hours to go see. And that's pretty much like how they originated. And I assume that it's probably pretty much the same thing for Canada, except for driving through Saskatchewan, there's literally only one highway, the Trans-Can, that goes from east to west. In the U.S., you have a bunch, and that's where you get Route 66 from, right? So,
yeah, I guess it's just a difference in how they developed and the geography.
Yeah, for sure.
And just going back to your kind of origins with this stuff.
Yeah.
Why did you find yourself interested by the weird stuff? Because I know for me, I'd never really thought about it, but I look back on my travels, so say somewhere like Tokyo, and I think, yeah, I went to the Shibuya crossing and it was pretty cool, you know, the famous three-way crossing.
Yeah, yeah.
But I don't really care or remember. I can vaguely remember this cool restaurant we found, or I mean, I have been to the Eiffel Tower, but nothing I remember about Paris has anything to do with the Eiffel Tower.
No,
yeah. You know, when did you realize that it was the weird stuff you liked? Sorry, that sounds really sketchy.
Yeah, no. Oh, we want to get into that.
No, we do not want to get into that.
I've always been into the avant-garde in terms of like art and music. I've been a musician since my earliest memories. I've always loved music and started playing music, and you know, I love weird music and I love weird things. I love things that other people are not drawn to, and the sort of like the older I've gotten, I think I'm drawn to the idea that other people aren't interested in that. And so, you know, like you can go to the Eiffel Tower in Paris, but everyone's going to be there, so why do I need to go there? A million people have visited there. For me, I want to see stuff that no one really goes to. A huge like fan of abandoned things. The pandemic kind of ruined the lure of abandoned things because everyone got into it at that time because there was nowhere else to go, right? Especially in Toronto and like the surrounding area. To me, those were like sacred places that I loved. Like anything could happen there. And when I travel now, it's like I love just weird stuff. Like I find the idea that someone was like, if they created something, as we were talking, the world's largest ball of twine, someone was interested enough to make that ball of twine. To me, that's crazy.
Yeah.
You know, to most people, but also I find that fascinating. It's like someone put like 70,000 hours into creating this ball of twine. Like that's their life's work. That's crazy, you know? So I appreciate the fact that, like,
was it his last name Twine? Was it like John Twine?
Ronald L. Twine.
It's funny. I did that dad joke today with my son. He goes, I hiked a 14er this week, and I go, what was it? He goes, Mount Massive. I go, oh, it's named for John Massive. that discovered it.
I
Love a
hiked
good
Mount
dad
Massive.
joke.
Did you?
Yeah, out of Leadville, Twin Lakes, Leadville.
Oh yeah.
It's the only 14er I've done. Yeah, because I mean, really, life is what happens around you every second, isn't it? It's not ticking off the Eiffel Tower and Big Ben and whatever, the Statue of Liberty. That's not what is interesting in the world.
I think when I first, and I'm sure we've all fallen victim to this, is in our earlier years, if we were like fortunate enough to be able to travel, is we got wrapped up in visiting Big Ben.
Yeah.
And then you realize it's just a big fucking clock, you know? Like
you take that back. No.
So some girls like that.
Yeah. But like the older I've gotten, I'm like, you know, and I feel like a lot of people get this where they just, you know, they want to see something different. I mean, that's what travel is all about, right? Is like, I don't, you know, I live in Toronto. I'm not going to go hang out at the main square downtown. I'm not going to go, I don't remember the last time I was at the CN Tower, you know, like these aren't things that I'm interested in, and I'm not interested in seeing these things in other places. Like the tourist traps are like my biggest pet peeve, and I've always, you know, if we get back to the lineage of like why I started this, it was like to inspire people to step off the beaten track. Like I lived in Prague for many years, and I remember all the British bachelor parties that would come on the weekends, right? And they would just hang out in Vaclav Nemesty, like the main square and the main street, where it was the same Irish bars that you could find in London, and they were there. And I'm like, but if you took 100 steps to the left down a back alley, you'd find the real Prague. And that, it blew my mind. I'm like, just step off the tourist trap, like and you'll find amazing things. So to me, that's like always been very important. It's been one of my main missions, is for people to just step off of like what everyone else is doing, you know?
I think part of the problem is that it doesn't sound impressive. If you say, I went to Moulins in central France and wandered around and talked to a guy in a cafe, no one cares. No one cares. But if you went to the Eiffel Tower, everyone at work is super impressed. And so that's why I love what you're doing, because you're trying to make people realize that actually it's not the, you know, it's not the big stuff that's cool, but there's a subtlety to it that I suspect a lot of people don't quite get.
I think there's two people. There's people that are very curious about things and people who aren't, and there's no shame in that if someone's not curious about things, if they have joy in their life and they like not doing that stuff. But I think probably all three of us, like if I'm somewhere, I'm curious what's over the next hill, or what's down that alleyway, or what's behind that building, or you know what that abandoned building used to be, or like you said, like what's that placard or stuff. And I think just not everybody's that way, and some people are happy just going to and hanging out at the airport bar and they feel like they got a trip. I don't know that we're that way.
I get it, and I you know, I can rail against it, but I also admire the idea that you can be happy with the same old. You know, we all have friends who never left our towns when we grew up. They're still there with like their high school girlfriend or boyfriend, and they've never even left, you know, the state or the province or the area. There's something admirable about that, because no matter how much, I'm sure you guys probably have this too, is no matter how much you see, if you're a searcher, it's like enough is never enough. It's like, you know.
Well, your horizons expand, don't they?
That's the thing, right? It's like,
yeah,
you know, we could all be traveling for another million years and now never see everything in the world. Like that's it's, you know, but that's also the beauty of it. So
Yeah, and there's nothing. I know. Yeah, like you say, I know people that never left the village I grew up in. It's a blessing and a curse, right? They're super. In some ways, they're super happy, and
They never left Birmingham.
They're happier than me in some ways, but by the same token, once you've sort of realised how much interesting stuff there is in the world, it's pretty hard to turn that knowledge off.
It's true. It's true.
But what's your, just quickly while we've still got you, what's the plan for the Instagram stuff? I mean, is that your job?
It's not my job, but it's become a job.
That's cool. In a good way? Are you saying that as a positive?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
you're very successful with it.
I mean, I wouldn't do it if I wasn't passionate about it, because it does. I think a lot of people get this weird idea that, oh, I just make these posts. There's a lot of thought put into what I do, and it takes up a hell of a lot of time. Not just capturing content, but just curating it, and making sure that it goes out in a certain way, in the way that I want it to go out. I don't know what's going to happen to it. I mean, it's the influencer game, which, again, I'm not going to admit that I am one, but I've been told several times that I am. It's changed a lot, and it's constantly changing. I'd probably have more of a career doing it, and I'd quit my day job if I wasn't in Canada, because a lot of the stuff, aside from YouTube, is just not monetizable. Instagram's not monetized. TikTok's not monetized. If I drove 3 hours to Buffalo, I'd be making money on it. So for me, it's just a labor of love. And, if it does get me work from time to time, but as long as I'm passionate about it, it gives me a reason to travel. So, yeah.
Wow. Keep doing it, because I think, in some ways you got the true spirit of travel is alive and well on your page. So, yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I'm pretty hard to impress. I really do. And I think it's very authentic, and it's interesting, and it's stuff that I normally don't see. Because a lot of this stuff, like you talk about, influencers, I can Google what it looks like. Like, I don't need to see someone standing in front of it. Like, it's the stuff that I'm not going to Google, and I'm not going to find that is interesting.
Honestly, that's it, right? It's like the internet age is like everything is at your fingertips, but I think most people don't know what to look for. And that's where I come in, because it's like, if you say, oh, I've never seen that before, like, I've done my job. Like, I've showed you that this thing exists. Like, you would never even know it exists. And like, if I'm impressed, then someone else will be impressed by, what I'm impressed by. And that's the whole point. So,
well, hopefully you're leading a bit of a travel revolution, and we won't have the same queues at the most famous lakes in BC, and we might have a few more people looking at bales of twine in Kansas. I think that would be.
I was just at Lake Louise like 5 days ago.
I mean, it's amazing.
It's amazing, but also like
half the lakes in the world are in Canada. There's a lot of lakes to look at, and that's just the one that got the famous name.
There's a lot of amazing lakes in that area alone. It's just
Yeah.
But yeah. No. I mean, there's some stuff that I'm like, I understand why it's popular, and there's some stuff.
Yeah.
Like the Eiffel Tower, I've never got. To bring up the Eiffel Tower again.
It's kind of cool, but it's a long way to go to look at it.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, keep doing what you're doing. It's great, and thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Especially after you just drove, 5,000 Ks?
About that, yeah.
Well, yeah, I really appreciate you coming on. It's super fun, and maybe we could do it again after your next trip.
Yeah,
when you drive through Denver, I'll show you all kinds of weird stuff.
I do love Colorado. I'll openly admit that right now. So, lots of great ghost towns there.
Cool. Well, thanks so much, man. We'll do it again. As I say, next time you're doing a big trip, it'd be really fun to hear about it.
Yeah, no worries at all.
Cool. Thank you.